So we have two chapters. I tended to like chapter 1 better than chapter 2, although chapter 2 had some remarkable little pieces. So I'm going to start there. She said in there, seeing is why we're here. How many have just watched things but haven't really looked at and saw them? You ever done that before?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think so.
It's a simple way to go through life, isn't it? Especially because there's those things where we have to be responsible. So sometimes in the rest of life that we often define as less important, we go through with much less intentionality, right? And so she talked some about marriage and about how in that marriage, and this can apply to any kind of relationship causes us to have to grow. And how many have learned that growing, like she said, hurts your joints? Growing up is hard. So tell me something about one of your growing edges from this last little while. What's it calling out of you? And you can go ahead and say the things that where you don't really want to grow, if you want to.
Well, all I got out of that first chapter was about Allie and killing the person. I didn't get.
I'm on chapter 2. We're going to go back to chapter 1 in a second.
Oh, we're in the kittens.
Yeah, so go to the kitten chapter.
Sorry.
Because I think we can get through that pretty quickly, and then go back to chapter 1 where I'd like to spend more time.
Oh, okay.
So what has this last year caused you to have to, what growing has it caused you to have to look at?
I think for me,
go ahead.
the problem has been growing slower. And it's not who I see myself as and not who I want to be, but it's becoming more and more of my reality. But doing 2 things a day instead of 20
Yeah.
is more my style or more my stamina these days. And I don't know that COVID is responsible for that.
Didn't help.
It didn't help, and it has made me look at that in a way I might have ignored before.
Mm-hmm. You know, I once heard the human life described this way: the last quarter is like the first quarter, but in reverse. All those things that we learned and those responsibilities that we took on and those privileges that we gained, we little by little lose some of them. And that's tough, isn't it? That's a whole different work. It's much simpler to say, oh, look, I got my driver's license, than to say, oh, I got to give up my driver's license. And some of the work we're doing right now feels like that second side of things, doesn't it?
Yeah, somebody wrote a book. I think it's called Elsewhere, or Saint Elsewhere, maybe. I can't remember. I read it a few years ago, and she's so upset because she died the day before she was supposed to take her driver's test.
Oh.
And now she's in Elsewhere, so she's getting younger instead of older. So that means that she can't take a driver's test that she's wanted to do all this time.
She'll never get to that driver's test.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Everything was in reverse there.
And there's no doubt that there's some of the things like this week I was walking and I began to get this pain in my heel. I think I have a bone spur. Well, I don't want that. I want to go in reverse from that, but that's where it's drawing me forward, right?
Yeah, I relate to what Judy said too, in terms of lower energy and lower caring about doing things that I had done before, which I think in terms of my feeling of responsibility that I've lived with all my life, it's hard for me to accept.
Yeah.
So I have lowered energy and lowered interest, and that's strange to me.
I had a lady up in Sun City who I went and visited. She was in one of the adult senior living places there, and she gave me her resume. I used to be this in church, right? She was in her early 90s, and she said, "This is what I used to be. Now I can't." Right? And much of that was her definition of herself. And it was like, who am I now? Because I'm not all of that.
Well,
Can that be replaced with anything?
Well,
Can you say, well, I used to be this, but now I'm going to do this instead?
and I think that's exactly what we have to do, Sam, is say what else can be true. Maybe you're not the chairperson of, maybe you're not the driver of this event, but who are you now? This lady, her name was Gladys Lindbergh. And I said, Gladys, help me out then. Pastor would like for me to start some services in different senior living homes. Can you help set that up for me? And she became the driving force of a small service that had more than 50 people in it.
Wow.
Right? Where I'd come in once a month, and she was the one who had the connections to make that happen. So it just became different. Instead of saying, what do I do at the big church? It's what do I do here? You know, so sometimes you have to switch location. You have to switch ideas of from this purpose to that purpose. But it is a shift every time. But I have a feeling that St. Francis people understand that shift happens. We just don't always like it, do we?
We're never prepared for it.
Never prepared, right? It would be much easier, wouldn't it, if we could control when that happens. We had an event not long ago, exactly like what she described about the kitten, where our puppy dog disappeared, and we looked all over the house and could not find him. Couldn't at all. Now he'd kind of been hurt earlier, and so we think he was probably way back in the back of his doggy thing, but we'd looked in there and we didn't see him, but he wasn't moving at all, and he was just gone. And it was so disconcerting to have him gone like that. Just like with them, what do you do in those kinds of moments where something is just gone the way you understand it? We didn't know what to do. Do we go to bed? Do we what?
Is the word called anxiety?
There is some anxiety that happens with all that. Absolutely.
So what finally happened? Did he just wander out?
We went to bed, woke up the next morning, and there he was between our legs, like always. We don't know for sure what happened, just like they didn't know for sure where that kitty cat was at. Sometimes we don't have perfect answers to give to each other, do we? In fact, sometimes we are the very scary answers that are being given to each other. I loved how she kind of started off that towards the first part. She said, I'd forgotten how disconcerting intimacy can be, how rare and how devastating the potential for loss that's inherent in it. And then she started talking about disgusting uncooked egg parts.
Yeah, I love that.
Right? Those things that we can't quite control about each other because they're still developing. Right? And when we place ourselves in each other's hands, we sometimes get those things, right? And that's as true about the horizontal relationships as they are sometimes about the parent-child relationships. They put us in really strange places, don't they? So where have you had to face that? Any of that this year, as you've had to sit together with some of those intimate ones and you've had to figure out what to do when all of a sudden you realize that spending 12 hours a day with someone is not the same as spending an hour every once in a while with them?
Yeah, I like that section around the first part where she's talking about really seeing people. And I find that I want people to really see me, but it's harder for me to make the effort to see other people. Um, Sometimes, not always, but um, sometimes you just have to get so outside of your own feelings about something to see where another person is coming from, and that's not always so easy. But I've been reading Pema Chodron, one of her books again, and her, I think it's the whole Buddhist concept of being curious about how something will turn out instead of afraid. And I find myself going to that concept when I have a lost kitten or dog or whatever, so to speak, to just try to breathe deeply and let myself wonder how this is going to turn out instead of going to the very worst possible way it could turn out.
That's at least a good way to start bridging back towards chapter 1. I don't want to go there yet, but remember she had that part where she said curiosity is one way we know that our souls are functioning. How else do we know? I think is what she's asking us. And in this chapter, I think one of the ways we know is because of intimacy, that scary space that we hesitate to go into, but that we also are drawn towards. That's one way that we know our souls are functioning.
Somebody told me yesterday when I was at a support group that if you are worried that you have dementia, you probably don't have dementia because because the thought of it is still present. You're aware. Uh, you can be worried. You can worry about a lot of other things that you can prove you don't have or do have. But that's an interesting observation.
Yeah, yeah. You know what I say about my wife all the time, right? She says this: I know worrying works because most of what I worry about never happens.
Yeah.
And yet worrying seems to be pretty indicative of what we do, right? And instead, I think what she's drawing us towards is the relationship. At the end, she talked about sitting on the couch, the two of them together, without the kitten yet. And she said, this is what intimacy looks like. Sometimes where they sat scared and sad, but together. Sometimes that's what intimacy looks like. And I don't know about you, I'd rather not be either scared or sad. But sometimes that's where you have to be, and to be with somebody in that space.
Yeah.
And that's what we're meant to do as individuals, as couples, as a church, is to somehow be there in the midst of, isn't it? And that's what's been so hard for me, at least, about this last year, is that we haven't been able to be that in the same way. Right?
I'm guessing that if we look back 5 years from now or more, we can find out all the things that we learned that maybe hadn't surfaced. This year turns out to be a real fertile, yeah,
I
turned out to be fertile for us, but
Yeah.
not now.
yeah. But I think we have to do something like what they were telling each other. The kitten isn't dead. It's just in the living room. The
Yeah.
year wasn't just bad, because right now it just feels like it was a terrible year, one we never want to go through again. But hopefully, you're right, Sam. What will become of this? What will
You know, when I was a Boy Scout, the big deal was be prepared. Always had to plan ahead. You had to have enough water, enough everything, the boots and whatever you need when you're going hiking and camping and all. Uh, you you had to be prepared.
Right.
And this this experience, uh, we weren't exactly prepared for.
Right.
And the end result is that there's anxiety because you were not, we were not prepared. I was not prepared
Yeah.
for the length of time where the change I was hoping would happen didn't happen.
But I think this is a good bridge back to the first chapter. She starts off the first chapter by saying, defeat has been for so many of us the portal to soul. And this year, you're right, Sam, we were not prepared for. We were defeated as we moved into this year. But did it open us up to soul? Did it open us up to longer term victory maybe, but that at the moment didn't feel like it at all? How did this open us up, I think, is what she's basically asking with all this. And maybe you've gone through one of those times before, and how many going into it liked it? I look at my dirty moments, the grubby fingerprints moments, as she calls them, and I wouldn't have chosen to go into them, but looking back, I say, I'm so glad I did. How about you?
Yeah. And just the fact that there's an inkling of survival now, you know, it's beginning. All of a sudden, we can shift our whole position about how we feel, which maybe a month ago we would not have felt that way, or 3 months ago we would not have. And if it reversed again and we went back to the way it was in November, and they said, well, we've made a mistake. Um, all this stuff that we're doing medically has to be started up again or something. Then would we be any more prepared for that emotional experience? And that I thought related to the marriage when she was talking about, uh, well, you have this and this, but you can leave it. But when you're married, you're there. He's in your house,
Yeah.
your emotional house.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. What I define as my house, they define as their house. Wait.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, right.
Mm-hmm.
I think right after I retired from teaching, I suddenly discovered that Phyllis still owned her kitchen. It, it was her kitchen, and it was not for me to go in and rearrange things that I thought would be good. You know,
I told him to get a job and get out of my kitchen.
And that's one of the tough parts about retirement, isn't it? Is you have to figure out new relationships with each
Oh
other.
yeah.
that's right.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'd like to say that I think one of the surprising benefits that came out of this year were the opportunities for connection on Zoom. And
Yes.
I know with our soul connection in particular, there are people who could not physically be in the room with us, but could be in the Zoom connection with us. And being able to create a Zoom connection for my family at Christmas time was a good thing. So I think we're finding alternative ways for people to be together and actually spreading the opportunities wider. And I want to keep hold of that.
Yeah. And how many of you were reluctant in some way or another to start doing this type of conferencing? How many had some reservations of one sort or another about doing it?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe about yourself, maybe about the conversation or whatever. It is scary, as are some of those other things we have to step towards.
You know, that takes me back to when you first said, you know, what of yourself did you come in touch with? For me, it's my resistance to getting a computer and being able to be seen and see you on Zoom. So here I am on my landline phone. I don't have a smartphone. I can't FaceTime with people. So, you know, it's like I have to take a look at my resistance to open myself up to do the new thing. But just being on the telephone is old and comfortable sharing over the phone. I've been doing that for years. So that's my part in this.
The good news is about you, Judith, though, is that you chose to still keep that connection. There were people who said, I'm not very good on a computer, so I'll just isolate for a year. We have some people who have never watched any of our services. Judith, I don't know if you know this. Judith comes up every week and watches it here.
And incidentally, the views of Grand Canyon were just breathtaking.
They were.
Monday when I saw that, I thought, oh, how come more people didn't rave about this at the talkback?
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah. The Grand Canyon, it's hard to take a bad picture.
Yeah.
No.
Right. Even with all the clouds in it, which Phyllis and I have seen, when it looked like if they were thick enough, you could just walk across to the North Rim.
Yeah, I've seen it like that before.
Yeah.
Even knowing that there's quite a drop you're going to go through if you try to do that.
That's right.
Still kind of you're still kind of wants to try, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Before I forget, you said that you served up in Flagstaff for a while?
Not in Flagstaff. When I was a teacher, I was the AEA regional representative for basically all of the northern third of the state. Everything in Apache, Navajo County, and everything above Flagstaff and Coconino Canyon. So Grand Canyon was part of my region.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Navajo Reservation.
All of the Navajo, all of the Hopi, all of that area.
Did you run across Dr. Charles Kendall? I think he died, but it might have been Travis Kendall.
I knew his son Travis really well. I actually followed him at First Church Phoenix, and he was still there, even though I'd become the associate pastor instead of him. So I know he.
Travis and I were friends. Travis and Philip and the family.
Yep. So we talked about some different ways that we don't get to that. She talked about the 3 different toxic conditions of the soul. The first one was perfectionism. The second one was the ensuing and chronic contempt for oneself, the belief that one is secretly defective and less than. And the third was the obsession that one is right and better than. How many are guilty of one or another of those dysfunctions? Or maybe all 3 at some moments?
Well, I'm sure that Phyllis is right and better than.
Yeah, that's good.
And the thing of it is those tapes that play inside our head like that are sometimes the ones that we believe, that we're supposed to be perfect. Well, who else told you that you had to be perfect? And is that a voice you want to listen to? That's the wisest voice that you should listen to.
Teachers in nursing school, you dare not make a mistake.
That's right.
Who taught you that you were right and better than? And do you have to be in every moment?
And you get close to South Pacific now, and the song "You've Got to Be Taught" before you're 7 or 8 or
Yes.
9. You've got to be taught.
Yeah. But didn't you like how she talked about those wise women who said that her mind is not who she was? They started pointing her towards soul. Who is
Yeah.
it we truly are? Not who is it that we've taught ourselves we are, how it is that we think we are. What's the truth about us, about you?
Is that what the Buddhists are constantly searching, or have they found it?
They're definitely trying to say, look beyond what seems most evident and see something. And that's what Gnostic Christians, for example, were trying to say.
Mhm.
This that seems real, this body, they often use the image of body. This is just something that you put on. It is not you. Who is the you? The true you? When is it that you feel like you've approached some answer to that? Where is it that you had some clarity about the true you? And what happens so that you got to that space?
I think it's when you're in close relationship with somebody and you're interacting and you feel that that interaction is an equal one. You're sharing yourself and hearing the other person's self real clearly.
Yeah.
That's an exciting place, and it feels to me like it's a sacred place.
Yeah. Even though before you speak those words of real honesty, you sometimes go, "Oh, I haven't said this before." Don't, right? But suddenly you're in a space where you feel safe, and so you speak the truth about you that you haven't spoken very often.
And it doesn't have to be at the counselor's table
Uh-uh.
desk. It doesn't have to be with the psychiatrist.
No.
It can be a close friend or maybe a Buddhist or whatever.
I do think
Be
it
your
has.
pastor.
Yeah, I do think it has to be in a soul space, though. I think that's her point, and that's definitely my experience. Is we need those soul spaces of life, and it can be in an intimate, sexually intimate space, like she's talking about in chapter 2 with her husband. But it can also be with friends. It can be with a counselor or with a pastor. It can be with the people that you meet with on a regular basis, that you get beyond some of this stuff. This week I talked to my friend Joe. Joe's wife is seriously ill, in and out of hospitals right now. But Joe and I met for 10, 15 years every week. And so we had a soul intimacy. He knows me in a different way than what a lot of people do. And we haven't talked for a while because he's up in the Phoenix area and I'm down here in Tucson. And of course, the two don't talk, you know. The sun devils up there.
That's right.
But suddenly we were back in that same intimate space. Where have you found it for you? What are some of those spaces where you hit soul?
Well, it happened. It happens sometimes for me in the community of St. Francis.
Uh-huh.
That acceptance of what I would call my mistakes that are just part of what it is. I have a hard time imagining being in a community of faith that didn't do that acceptance work. But I think there are some.
I think there's a lot of them because sometimes what religious do is they say, put on your Sunday best, and then you can come to church. And St. Francis has done a much better job about embracing the raggedy.
Mm.
Bring your raggedy self, and let's celebrate that. And that is a gift of this community, a wonderful, amazing, that's not built into every community.
Well, that's why I sort of take delight in those missteps we take in celebration time sometimes. That it just proves we're human, friends. It's just okay.
Yeah.
She's
Not
talking
the end of the world.
about the fact that on Tuesday after our celebration team, I said, okay, it looks like we're going to be perfect on Saturday and Sunday. And
Yeah.
have mistakes.
If that's our goal, it's very, very limiting and restrictive.
Yeah.
That's
It's not the best of goals, is it?
not for me, maybe because I just can't do it, but for me, it's just not worth that stridence of always wanting to be the best.
So let me tell you though, let me challenge you a bit with this. At least one of the reasons why my conservative friends liked our ex-president is because they were tired of perfection. And they wanted somebody who was more like them.
Mhm.
That's at least part of the reasons why they liked him.
It had nothing to do with Fox News.
Oh no, it
Yeah.
had a bunch to do with all that too. But they saw flaws in President Trump that they also saw in themselves, and it gave them an ability to be themselves more. Not always in healthy ways. I'm not trying to say that, but that's at least part of what that dynamic is, and why they have a hard time letting go of that.
One of the parts of perfection that was always difficult for me as a child and as a teenager was that I was pretty good at school. And so my teachers and my parents always expected me to be perfect, but I wasn't perfect. I'd never in my life got all A's. Um, and part of it was I just didn't want to be the nerdy smart girl all the time. It was not a popular thing to be when I was in school. And so I didn't do all the extra credit projects and things that teachers wanted me to do. And so for a long time, I felt like I had disappointed people, um, that I hadn't been good enough until, I don't know, sometime in college, I just went, gosh, I'm doing pretty well. I never got all A's in college either. And if I'm not revealing my grade point average to my grandchildren because it wasn't very good, but I made it through and I graduated. But somewhere along the line, I let go of the need to be academically perfect. I still have a lot of reasons why I want to be perfect in so many other realms of my life that it never worked, but
Yeah.
work in progress here.
Well, and that's what we have to understand. I think she asked at one point about, is the soul damaged by acne and political madness, and I can't remember what else, several things. And all of our souls can be. The question is, do we let it be a mortal wound, or do we let ourselves grow beyond that? Do we let our souls repair from all that? And that's sometimes a hard process, isn't it? Because some of the things that our parents drilled into us don't die easily. Some of those maybe shouldn't die. They're good things for us to hold on to, but other things are ones that are our duty to repair in the world. I've told you about my box, haven't I? That I have in my house that's
Mhm.
full of stuff that really should be thrown out, but I can't throw it out. So I've told my sons they have to. I've just showed them the box and you're gonna have to throw it out someday. But I think that's true about some of the things that I am as a person, some of which they've inherited, and they're gonna have to figure out which of those things that I can't let go of, that I can't excise from my life. They have to be able to excise, they have to be able to throw out. Just like I,
Alice, you're thinking about me, aren't you?
yeah.
I've got this room. I can barely get into. I threaten people that go in there, they have to have their insurance paid up because they may never find them again.
Just in case, right?
Right. Everything else is neat.
Yeah. So when is it in your life that you've approached soul best? How is it that what brought you to that? Who was there with you? Tell me about some of your soul places.
Is that like soulmates?
Could be like soulmates, and I don't mean that just in the relational. I mean the loving relational thing. Where else do you have soulmates? Where have you had a space where you could where you could reach soul easily?
Mine is probably nature more. Being out in nature is always going when I was younger and able to hike. And we'd go camping a lot. We'd do a lot of hiking, a lot of exploring of Arizona. And whenever I go to the ocean, I just feel such peace. It's like I've just become one with the universe whenever I'm on the beach.
Yeah.
It just settles me down. And I love seashells and I love stuff like that.
It reminds me of a trip that Joni and I took long ago. I was working on my bilingual endorsement, and so I had to take a class, and so Chapman University, I think it was, offered a class where we'd go down to the other side of the Sea of Cortez, to San Felipe. We went down there and we spent a week in the schools down there. But we also spent much of that time on the beaches looking for shells. And that sits in my mind as a very soul time where I was in connection that way. So thank you, Judy.
You want to watch PJ's eyes light up? I'm going to say a word. Sanibel Island.
Woohoo! My favorite place in the world.
Yeah. And we should have those holy places like that, right? Where our souls find rest, contentment, joy.
When my mother was aging, we took our two boys and my parents to Sanibel Island. My mother wasn't able to sit easily, so she just laid on top of the seashells on this huge beach, and she would just look at different ones and pick them up and enjoy them. She knew it was probably her last trip there. And our two boys are off playing, frolicking in the waves and the water, and they're throwing things. I thought, what in the heck are they throwing? So when they came in to the beach, I said, what are you guys throwing? They said, well, the whole ground, the whole sand under our feet was full of starfish. So they became frisbees, and we were just throwing them everywhere. They were just having such a good time. But
Nice.
that was one of my last times.
And tell
We
me the
went
name
there
of
one
that.
more time after that.
Tell me the name of the island again.
Sanibel. It's off the west coast of Florida.
Nice.
Hmm.
Nice.
It is When my parents used to go there when they were young, they had to take um, a ship across,
A ferry.
a ferry, that's right, because they didn't have the bridge yet.
Okay.
Now they have the bridge, and it's easy to go to Sanibel and the adjoining island. I can't think of the name of it now.
Nice.
Right there. It's just paradise.
Nice. How about the rest of you? What's one of your soul places?
Um,
Diva.
we had the good fortune to go up to Hopi 3 times during their Kachina dance festivals. And I really felt the spirit of the people and the land connecting, because the dances were done to bring the rains. And while I was there, I really believed that that was the purpose of the dances, and the rains would come because of the dances. Again, it was one of those sacred places, and it was an honor for us to be able to go there and see the dances and have a feeling of what was really important for all the rest of us to know.
Nice. Very nice.
Well, you got to see the snake dances.
No snake dances. No, this was all. These were all kind of from the stories of creation, then
Yes,
to the home dances when all the Kachina dancers
yes,
were in the
yeah.
pond at the same time, and then they all went back into the mountains. The dancers
Yes,
were planning that.
And
yes.
we need those kinds of memories to go back to, don't we?
Yeah.
Those kinds of
Yeah.
spaces to draw
Indeed.
back into our minds. Sometimes if you see me in a meeting looking at my phone, because if it's a contentious meeting or a boring meeting, I might just be looking at this right here. Right? That's in the middle of West Maui. And that's one of my holy soul places. I just go right there. How about the rest of you? What's one of those soul places for you?
There's been many, but the top of Mount Lemon in a grove of ponderosa pines up there where it's quiet.
Yeah.
And just a little bit off the road before you get to the observatory at the top. There's a fence there, and we parked, and I walked back in that, and it reminded me of the years that I spent growing up with ponderosa pines at the South Rim Grand Canyon.
Mm-hmm.
And I swear they communicate with me.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm with you. Anyone else? Judy, you're muted.
Sorry. The
There.
Grand Tetons are my favorite space,
Mm-hmm.
just to go and sit and look at them. It's amazing.
Yeah. I almost got a job right out of college on the west side of the Grand Tetons in the Teton Valley, which now is mostly $1 million homes because they're invading over there.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes the difficulty is stuff invades our holy places, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes it's what we were talking about before, that time invades it. And it's not the same as what it was 20 years ago.
One of my favorite spots, which I don't get to see very often, is the Pacific Ocean in the Los Angeles area. I lived growing up a mile and a half from the ocean, and so I could walk there as a teenager. And it just has a soothing quality to me, just watching the waves and listening to the waves. And then my dad lived in that same house all his life, well, from when we moved there. And when I was going over there once a month when he was sick, I used to make sure that I had at least one afternoon that I could walk down to the beach and just sit there for a while, because in the turmoil of his illness, it brought space and calm to me. Just listening mostly and smelling and watching. And
Yeah.
anyway,
An ocean is a full sensory event, right? It is all those seeing and smelling and hearing, and there's more than just one thing going on as you do as you sit there. So you're right.
And you don't need to have a crowd with you.
yeah.
Right. Right. So the hard part is that we don't always go to those holy places. We don't always find time to do that soul work. And there's things, important things that get in the way, things like success, right? We're supposed to be successful in life. We're supposed to get things done. And so sometimes we're so busy doing that we don't go to the soul spaces of life. What is it for you that's stood in your way? Like the story that she told about Allie it was prison. But prison also became the way that she discovered soul work. What was it for you? What is it for you that is most likely to take you away from soul? And
Overscheduling.
scheduling does it, overscheduling especially. Yeah.
Responsibility,
Uh-huh.
responsibility and duty.
Absolutely. And Diane, I think that's really true if some of the things that we're doing are responsible, important work. So like, let's say that you're a chair of a committee at church. That's really important work, but it can sometimes make it so that you're no longer doing soul work. You forget that in the midst of whatever the job description is.
And hopefully, Diane, you don't lose it. You don't forget it completely. You know, like you say, well, every 7 days I'm going to take off and do some soul for me.
Yeah.
And I don't do that. I need to do that more often.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing though too, Sam. It's not just that you forget. It's at least part of her point is that we forget to remind each other.
Yeah.
And part of what our duty is to each other is to be like those ladies who came in and said, your mind is not your soul.
Yeah.
And to draw ourselves back into the more important work.
PJ and I spend regular times, especially at night, just as we're going to bed. She does not fall asleep right away. I can fall asleep in about 5 seconds. But one of the things that happens most frequently that I enjoy is I can go over to her and say, we had a good day today, didn't we? That was fun, or we did this or that. And I get a response like, uh-huh. but it's good. Or just touching her hand. Uh, you know,
But see, what you're doing is you're tying these two chapters together, and I think that's important. Who are the intimates that we allow to help us to find that space of soul again?
yeah.
Right? And we need to have those spaces. I talked about Joe, and it was myself, Joe, and Ken, and we met every week for those 10 or 12 years. Who is it for you? And it can be someone who lives in the same house as you. It can be someone that you meet with only every once in a while. But who is it that calls soul back out of you?
I have one that's hung up in your church, our church, on the wall. There's a gal, an angel, but she's alive. She's a living angel.
Yeah.
And Virginia, man. And by the way, you were going to hold the service. the announcements, and you were going to stand in front of that so I could see those pictures.
I
The
forgot.
other one,
Thank you.
yeah, the other one was Ann and Bill Roberts. And almost every minute that we spent with Ann and Bill, we were very good friends. We traveled with them and lots of things together. Uh, they were priceless moments. Uh, just,
Yeah.
you know, it was like looking forward to, you knew that there was a block of time that was going to be spent with Ann and Bill, and
Yeah.
it didn't matter.
Yeah.
Ann and Bill was the first person to be over at our house when our son died.
Yeah.
And he was the one that told us about the Compassionate Friends. And boy, what a chain of events was that. So invaluable to have. And just a quiet statement. And Phyllis and I both took it on, and we spent 17 years serving that community of Compassionate Friends.
Nice. You know, what's really interesting about that, Sam, is I never met, no, I never met Bill, but I knew Bill because I met Ann. I got to do her
Yeah,
memorial
yeah,
service,
Oh.
and
yeah.
through her, she carried him into my life.
Mhm.
And that's an important thing for us to remember, is that those people who bring us soul, we get to carry. We get to have with us, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Good things.
How about the rest of you? Who are some of those soul people for you?
I
There's a
feel
lady named Judy Robinson who always used to light a warm part of my heart when she used to stand up in front of the congregation many years ago. And I don't know, she'd read the announcements or she'd tell a story or something. And I always looked to her. She seemed to smile at me in a way that really warmed my heart. I don't know.
She seems like somebody that I'd like to know.
Yeah.
Diane, it looked like you were going to say something.
I feel fortunate that I have a number of people in my life that I feel that soul connection with. I think that's what we were talking about. Certainly John and my daughter Karen and my good friend Lynn. And with all of those people, I feel like I can be open to be who I am. And so the level of trust is really important.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Exactly right. Anyone else?
Judy.
Me, it's my daughter-in-law and I
Mm.
have developed a really strong bond. And she texts me almost daily. She sends me videos and pictures of my grandkids constantly, lets me know how my son's doing. My son is very loving. He's just not a great communicator by phone or anything. So it's like, but she has kept me so close with my son and her and my grandkids that it's this treasure. I can't even, I just treasure it. You know, she just she helps add to my life so much. And then I have a really good friend named LaTanya who's moved from here to Kansas to take care of her mother. And we went through hell together, and we went through all kinds of really good times together too. And she probably knows the dark places in my soul better than anyone on this earth. And I miss her being here, but we still can connect. It's not the same connecting by video and stuff, but at least we're staying in touch. And then, but she's someone who's been part of my being. There's a few other people, but those are the people that really, really ground me solidly.
Anyone else? Thank you for sharing those. Let me end with a poem today. And I heard it from a movie that I watched
I'm reminding you.
yesterday. There's a movie, and I can't remember the name of it right now. But it's about these two ladies that met while they were playing in the 1940s on baseball teams, right? The type of thing that was celebrated in that movie with Gina Davis, right? They were part of those teams, and they met each other, and they had been together since then. So 60, 70 years they'd been together. Finally, they came out to their family. Finally, they got to celebrate a marriage. And in that marriage, the pastor read this poem. It's by E.E. Cummings. I carry your heart with me. I carry it in my heart. I am never without it. Anywhere I go, you go, my dear. And whatever is done by only me is your doing, my darling. I fear no fate, for you are my fate, my sweet. I want no world, for beautiful you are, my world, my true. And it's you are whatever a moon has always meant, and whatever a sun will always sing is you. Here is the deepest secret nobody knows. Here is the root of the and the bud of the bud, and the sky of a tree called life, which grows higher than soul can hope or mind can hide. And this is the wonder that keeps the stars apart. I carry your heart. I carry it in my heart. These people who have placed soul in us are people we carry in our hearts. Keep searching for them. Keep searching for that soul. Okay?
Okay.
Thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a
Take care,
good week.
everyone.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.